Well, the newly elected Johannesburg Mayor Thapelo Amad says he wants to be remembered as an official who made an impact in service delivery implementation. The Jama-ah politician was voted in to replace the DA's Mpho Phalatse yesterday. His nomination was put forward by some parties such as the ANC, EFF and the Patriotic Alliance, saying they chose Amad to take over as Transitional Mayor. Now let's discuss this and other political matters. We're joined by political analyst Thami Malinga. Thami, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, plenty to discuss, particularly about just the state of municipalities in our country. Let's start with Gauteng. What do you make of the new mayor? What is, of course, concerning is that term, transitional mayor. What does it mean? Are we likely to see another mayor next month?
That is very concerning, Unati, and good day to your viewers as well. The term transitional is very concerning in that it then says what does it make of the electorate, the people that initially cast the vote in 2021 to say we want a local government. Now you have parties that come together and say we are choosing Thapelo as a transitional mayor, and then the electorate are the ones that initially cast the vote. I have written extensively on this to say, no, we need an electoral reform, because now it means that the electorate are now, their votes are now no longer do not matter anymore, because now it means that these parties can now trade with the electorate vote. You know, it means that when things do not go right in terms of what's going to happen in Ekurhuleni and other metros, we are now hearing that there's going to be a motion of no confidence in Tshwane as well. When things do not go right in terms of all the battering that's going to be taking place, Thapelo might face a vote of no confidence. Then that takes us, the Johannesburg Metro back to square one in terms of having no mayor again and having the squabbles taking place, you know.
Now, I mean, at the top of the concerns, particularly for residents, whether it is in Gauteng or KwaZulu-Natal, at the top of the worry is service delivery. With all of these jostlings happening behind the scene, the concern is, will service delivery happen? We've just heard now that the EFF has basically cut ties with its relationship with the IFP. This could essentially affect 13 municipalities. We obviously know that the EFF, the ANC, and the Patriotic Alliance, to some extent, were influential in having Thapelo Amad be the next mayor of Gauteng. But talk to us about this latest from the EFF. What does that mean for KwaZulu-Natal and also ongoing relations with other parties in the country?
This is what the EFF is doing is actually in preparation for what's going to be taking place in the Durban Metro. So we know that there's Kaunda will be facing a motion of no confidence. So that is actually in preparation. So you now get a sense of feeling that there is a lot going on behind the scenes. You know, I was looking at all of this and making sense of it, and for me it's like a mafia movie taking place in front of our eyes, to say, if I get rid of the Vincenzo family, will you help me get hold of that territory? So this is what's happening now that the EFF is instructing the mayors to resign. So they are cutting ties with the IFP. So in essence, the EFF is now causing up with the ANC to say we will be prepared to actually give you some metros, you know, in KZN, if you guys are giving us some metros somewhere else. So this is what is actually happening. And truth be told, this is no longer about the electorate. This is now these parties bettering positions. And this is now about these parties trying to set ground where they will be launching their elections for the 2024.
Now, that analogy that you've made of this mafia sounds, I mean, in itself, you know, just very worrying, especially because, like you've said, we're going into the national elections in 2024. That is in a couple of months' time. Now, at the top of that list, especially for South Africans, is the fact that first of all, they are disillusioned by the lack of leadership that is, in this country and in the parties that they have entrusted. So the concern now, what we are seeing in local government, in as far as coalition governments are concerned, the concern is what will happen, post those elections. Will we likely see something like that happen? A lot of conversations going around, maybe we need to tighten, the governance around coalition parties and maybe have it aligned to the Electoral Act. How would that work in terms of just putting some form of regulation in terms of what we are currently seeing at local level?
I actually looked into the Electoral Act as well, and I feel that, especially when it comes to the Chapter 4 of the Electoral Act, it needs to say quite a lot in terms of what needs to happen, especially with the pronouncement of the results. The Chapter 4 and the Chapter 5 of the Electoral Act, the chapter that deals with the pronouncement of the results, it needs to actually give guidelines in terms of the announcement of the results. When there's no clear winner, do we need to actually do a runoff, or does it then need to provide clearer guidelines in terms of, one, if there needs to be coalitions, does it then refer to the electoral court, where the electoral court then needs to maybe work with especially, let's go to the municipalities. The electoral court needs to work with the Municipal Systems Act. Right now, the Municipal Systems Act is left to the MEC of local governance. And what do you make of that? The Municipal Systems Act is only in the hands of the MEC for local governance. In a country where out of 9 provinces, 8 provinces, you get the MEC for local governance coming out of one party. He has the leverage to manipulate it for the benefit of his party, like we've seen in Gqeberha, where the MEC is able to just manipulate it for the benefit of his party, where he changes the municipality to say, okay, it's no longer in the hands of the mayor. We're changing the system to be a system that it's no longer in the hands of the mayor, just for the benefit of his party. Now, our laws need to work in tandem, where the IEC, the Electoral Act, says in a case in municipalities where there is no clear winner, the Electoral Act needs to work in tandem with the Municipal Systems Act, where the local the MEC will then declare to say what systems does need to be put in place.
How do residents take the power back? I mean, they are probably looking at this. The instructions have not been met in several municipalities and several metros. When there are, a few weeks, a few months going into those national elections in 2024, how do they even begin to take back the power, but also hold those leaders accountable?
The only way that residents can take the power back is to make sure that with the bill that is currently in front of Senate, that's being revised, the electoral reform bill, we need to make sure that they make their voices heard, to make sure that we no longer look at the issue of the independent candidates, but we trickle down in terms of how do we make sure that in terms of the issues of the results, we need to make sure that we make an input in that as well, to say where there are no clear winners, how do those results are taken forward, So now this has shown that there's quite a loophole where we need, as residents, to make quite an input. The issue of what's happening in Komane right now, it shows that the residents have got the power to make an input. Now, with what is happening in Komane, they cannot even recall the mayor because of what's happening within our Electoral Act. They cannot recall the mayor because of how we voted. But if the Electoral Act had allowed them to call a referendum, they would be able to, because the situation is actually fertile for them to say, we want a referendum to be able to vote again. But that's not capable, that's not able at the moment.
Thami, let's move on to this issue now. Of course, all eyes on President Cyril Ramaphosa in terms of what his next move will be in terms of the reshuffling of cabinet. Of course, he's got a couple of weeks left, to deliver the State of the Nation address. But a lot of people are wondering, who is he going to let go of, given just the shenanigans that we have been seeing over the past couple of months within the party itself? But also, the people that he has to elect have to be the ones that not only show probably some form of respect towards him, but have to do the job at hand.
The issue of the reshuffling of the cabinet is quite tricky for the president, because one, he's got a tricky situation where he needs to reward those that have worked so hard to secure the second term.
I was wondering why you were laughing at that question, because it is very, it's a precarious position that the president is now finding himself in. But talk to us about what you think. What was likely going to happen?
What's likely going to happen is that you remember in Mangaung, he said he needs to apply his mind. Now, that statement is actually quite a, for lack of a better word, a pregnant statement, because one, his NEC is full of people that are quite in his corner, people that have protected him, and he doesn't know who to let go of, and it was quite easy. If he was a man with quite a strong backbone, because there were people who had said they were not going to serve under him. I mean, Lindiwe Sisulu, for example, came out clearly and said he's not going to serve quite under him, and it was an easy call. Post the election of Fikile Mbalula, the following day, he hit the ground running and started acting as the spokesperson. He still acts as a spokesperson. Now the question is, where is his salary coming from? I mean, it was an easy call for the president to even have Vincent issue a statement to say, from henceforth, Fikile has been replaced by so-and-so. But we still have Fikile acting dually. And now we have to ask ourselves as taxpayers, who is paying Figile's salary right now? Because we have Fikile making statements as the ANC SG, but we're still paying his salary. So he's still being the president who doesn't have a backbone, because he's still paying Figile's salary as the Minister of Transport, and he's having Fikile as SG, making statements every day as ANC SG. So he's not being the president who needs to actually take a stance and say, you know what, I need to make a call now. And he's still dilly-dallying and, trying to figure out who, so-and-so has helped me in this campaign. So-and-so is still in my corner, and that is why it's still taking him time.
And of course, another development is that announcement by the Deputy President's office saying David Mabuza is willing, to step down and resign, of course, paving the way for Paul Mashatile. Talk to us then about those dynamics. And of course, a lot of people and of analysts have been saying this is not a surprise, it was expected.
I believe that Dabete has actually resigned. It's just a matter of the ANC wanting to be the one that puts out the statement. Like prior, when we had the president calling the press conference wanting to resign to the South Africans, and they had called him, So it's a matter of the ANC wanting to manage the whole process, to say, we've got to manage this, and how people have got to resign through us, and we've got to make sure who takes what position and how we manage the process going forward, and how we try to hold the center. We do not, create a volatile situation where comrades go out and then they try to make noise from the outside. So initially, from where I stand, I believe that he has resigned, and it's just a matter of them trying to hold the center and make sure that it doesn't collapse. And in terms of Paul Mashatile, he is going to get a position in one way or the other in the cabinet, and he has shown ambition that that's the position that he wants.
Talking about ambition, former President Jacob Zuma, new chair of SANCO KZN, what do we make of this 80-year-old back in the fray, it would seem?
I believe that the old man needs to really let go and actually spend time with his kids and his grandkids. He needs to stop wanting to rule from the grave. And SANCO as such is actually a dead structure, because they haven't been vocal in issues where they need to be vocal. When NASA came up with and endorsed the ESCOM request for the tariff increase, SANCO was silent. SANCO is the one that should be leading, that should have been leading the call to say, this cannot be. How is it that the one civic movement that was active during the apartheid era to fight rent boycott was very silent when ESCOM was now saying we want an increase? They were dead silent, and now they were going to endorse and elect Jacob Zuma to be the president. What is he going to do besides being a factionalist and a tribalist within the whole ANC in KZN and larger within the whole ANC in the country? You know, SANCO is actually a movement that should also close shop, and it's no longer relevant within the present day South Africa, because they have never championed any issues that talk to the civic movement in a broader perspective of South Africans that are starving. Have SANCO raised any issues about the people in KZN that have been living in community halls since last year?
So I'm hearing you say that both entities, for them, obviously, it looks like this is a sweet deal for both of them to reinvent themselves, as it were. You're criticizing SANCO for not doing a lot of the things that other, civil organizations are currently doing, and them inviting, and not only inviting, but electing the former president, may be a mutual agreement between two entities that, in your words, seem to be irrelevant at this stage.
Yes, they are just inviting Jacob Zuma for populist benefit. They're just inviting him. They're just to benefit out of the Zuma name and just to raise, tribalism, to ride on the tribalistic, what do you call ticket. That is what they are there. That is what SANCO KZN are doing.
Very interesting. Thami, thank you so much for your time and obviously that analysis. A political analyst, Thami Malinga, just giving us the roundup in terms of what is currently happening and playing itself out in the political front in the country.